Welcome, folks. I hope and wish you are safe and healthy and also maintaining social distance. Today, we are interviewing Vikas D, and they are currently pursuing their BTech in CSE from Srinidhi Institute of Science and Technology. So, this is my first time, and I could not record Vikas D's audio. Yes, it sucks, but I would do my best to fill in for them. Hope this video can give you some insight about the interview
So,
process.
should we start? Great. Let's start. So, I hope you have access to the screen, to the doc, sorry. Or, uh, never mind, I'll share you. Check your chat. It's there. Just try to write something on that. Cool. Okay, so it's quarter past 11, right? Right? So, we have 45 minutes. So, we'll do a formal interview process, right? So, first, I'll introduce myself to you. So, hi, myself, Kaustav. I have been in this industry for about 7 years now. I started my career from TCS. I was a web developer first there, then I worked as a data engineer for about a year. Then I thought of switching the companies. I was getting bored with my current with my profile, so I switched my job. Went to Oracle, uh, spent about 2 years there, and then moved to Google as an application engineer. So we work on internal tools, basically build tools for Googlers, applications for Googlers for remote collaboration and for supply chain management. Yeah. So how about you tell me a bit about yourself as well, and then we can start.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a bit about Vikas now because, yeah, we couldn't record Vikas. So, as I mentioned, Vikas is a fourth year CSE student and uh, he is very interested in doing internships in Google. And currently, he has done his
Okay.
data analytics internship where they did an automation extraction,
Mhm.
geocoding map with Folium, sentiment analysis algorithm using Flask and machine learning. So it's quite a bit which what they did in the internship, and they
Mhm.
have knowledge of computer networks, REST APIs, and have also worked on them during their internships. Well, they are pretty much active on coding platforms like HackerRank,
That
InterviewBit, LeetCode, and they are quite
that that
dedicated
that
about their
sounds
work.
interesting. That
And
sounds. So do you have any personal projects as well which
we
you do
have more
on
information
the side?
about Vikas down in the description.
Ah, good, good. Is it live? Cool. Okay, so let's start. Now, I hope you can see the question. So, so you have an M cross N matrix, right? And the matrix comprises. So, what is your preferred coding language? Python. Okay, cool. So here we have. I guess Python has characters in it as a data type. Just string, no characters. Okay, so we have a string. We have a matrix which has separate strings, and it is an m cross n matrix. And you have got a list of words. Now, what you have to do is you have to check if those words are present in that matrix or not, and provide a list of that output. Yes. So what you can do is you can go uh, in vertical and horizontal direction while checking it. Right? Yeah. So you can go left, right, up and down. Yes. So just to give you an example, we have oath in here. So oath is OATH. If we search for P, there is no P. If we search for E, then we have EAT. If we search for rain, we so we have an R, but we do not have an adjacent A. Right? So it's just oath and E. So so the this thing the sequence doesn't matter, right? You can add in any sequence. So how would you approach it?
Alright, guys, so we missed Vikas D here. So, what they tell here is that they would be traversing, they would be picking up every word from the list, and then they would be traversing
Mm-hmm.
the matrix and find if there is, they can find the first character of that word or not. And once they find that first character, what they would be doing is they would be having four options to move,
So you do
either
not need to
up,
print it. You have to
downwards,
return it.
uh, towards right, or towards left.
So going a bit into it. So how are you going? Can you walk me through your solution in a bit more detail?
Alright, so while explaining their solution, what they do is they pick up the first string from the list and they start doing a dry run of the solution. So what they mention here is they would pick up O and then they would pick up the next character, which could be, say, if they are depending upon what direction they go to, right? It could be A or E.
Yeah.
Now, if it is E,
Do
they
not
would be
bother with the
ignoring it,
capitalization.
so they would be picking up A. Now, if they are going towards A, then again there are two
Mm-hmm.
options, which is A and T. Now, they would be ignoring A and then they would be picking up T. Now, if they are picking up T, again,
Okay. Okay.
the options
So
which
you
they
go to
have
T
are
and then okay.
E, H, and A. So they would be ignoring E and A, and they would be going with H.
Mm-hmm.
So now what they have to do is they have to return the answer. Now, how would they know that they have got that word inside the matrix? So what they mentioned is if they reach the word length, if they reach the at the end of the length of the word, it means that they have traversed through all the letters inside the matrix and they have found the word. So once that condition is fulfilled, they would be adding that word to their list of answer and they would be returning it back.
So what do you think its time and space complexity would be?
So I understand that this question is a bit tricky. It could be a bit difficult to answer, but they did a good job answering it. They what they mentioned was since each and every character inside that matrix has four options to go to, either upwards, downwards, left,
Mm-hmm.
or right. So while traversing through the matrix, they would have four options. Now, for each and every letter, since there are four options, so they can say that it is 4 raised to the power n. However, it wasn't quite the correct answer, I would say.
Okay, so you are saying you are trying to create a decision tree, and you are saying because we have four choices, and so it would be 4 raised to the power n, is it? And exponential. Okay, okay. So do you think we can reduce the time complexity? And sorry, what would be the space complexity for this?
The space complexity mentioned by Vikas was O of n. The reason for O of n being they would be using recursion for traversing the matrix. So that's why there is an n. And n here is length of word. So I would say that it would have been better if they
Okay.
would have said average of lengths of words present in the list. That would have been more appropriate. And I guess for the brute force solution, we could have got rid of the extra space too, because we could have just used iterative
Uh-huh.
solution.
Okay. Okay. So can you are you comfortable with this solution, or do you think we can optimize it in some way?
All right. So they have been doing pretty good till now, and their explanation of the base scenario was again quite good. But now they had to optimize
Okay.
the solution, and the approach they
Mhm.
chose was of try. That was pretty good, I would say. And the reason they gave for it is, say, if they chose P and peas, or say they chose rain and rains. So in these scenarios, what they would do is they would have to go through that particular character inside that matrix yet
Mhm.
again. However, they could avoid that. So how would they avoid that? So they thought of a
Okay.
hash map.
So
Now, a hash
if
map with
you
strings, they thought about why not use
uh-huh.
string? Sorry, why not use a try? So
Mhm.
this is a discussion which we had at the last, and I was asking them that how did they actually came up to this particular approach. So they explained me how they would use a try and what a try is, and then they told me about how would they be going deeper or how would they be traversing that try. So what they said
Mhm.
was first they would traverse through the matrix and they would check for each and every character if that is present inside the try or not, the root of the try or not. So if that is present, now they
Mhm.
would go
Mhm.
deeper. Now how would they go deeper is they would try to check each and every so they would try to check each and every direction or each and every adjacent element of that matrix and
Uh-huh.
see if any other matrix uh, is matching with the child of that try or not, with the children of that node or not, and if they are, then they would be moving forward with them. And with the
Right.
table which they have shown here, they try to explain that how they would be building try. So what they say is they would put the first object there, put the first character there, and they would move down towards the try, and they would keep adding those nodes in the try until the word ends. And once the word ends, to signify that the word has ended, they would put a hash. So for P and P's, so after P, for P after A, they would put a hash, and for P's after
Okay.
S, they would put
I
another
did
hash.
not get your idea about
Pretty good, I
going
would
deep.
say.
Whether or not we should go. Okay, so you are saying that if we have O for oath or P's, which you are saying, so if P is there, only then we will go deep inside what exactly?
So here I wanted to understand if they are clear with the approach of try or not. So what they told was they would be having outer layer of characters.
Mm-hmm.
So what they were actually signifying was
Mm-hmm.
the root of try. And while traversing the matrix, they would only be checking if the root of the try has the particular
Got it.
character or
Got it.
not, because
Got
that
it.
would be the first character. And if there is that first character at the root of
That's
the
it. That's
try,
it. That's
only
it. I
then
mean,
they would
just
require to
explain the two
traverse it.
examples. Don't let's not.
I would say it was correct explanation.
Mm-hmm. 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 Good. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. Got it. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 So, do you think you are comfortable with the solution now? Is there anything else we can do about it? Cool. Let's implement it.
Okay, so by now we both were comfortable with their approach, and they asked the question whether they should start writing pseudocode. So I mentioned that no, they should be
No,
writing production ready.
production ready code. Do not bother about capitalization again. Yeah, I can. I have a basic readability of Python, so not a problem. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
All right, folks. So it is going to be a long silence. Vikas has started implementing their code, and they have been interacting with me. But since we could not record any of their audio, so it's just
Hmm.
emptiness. And I removed some part of the code which was irrelevant because of that,
Hmm. Okay.
because I did not want you you all to listen to the emptiness and feel bored. So I removed
Okay.
that some part of that code which was I mean, to my opinion, was not very much relevant. It was just hard on coding. So let's walk through upon what they tried to do and how they were implementing it. So one thing I would like to highlight here is that they were explaining their implementation pretty well. So every step they were taking, not even if not every step, but the major part of their code, they were explaining it. And what that signifies is that the person communicates well. So I would like my team member, the one with whom I would be working, I would like them to communicate well with me, right? Every software engineer would want that. Communication is the key when you talk about software engineering, because you do not work independently. I mean, you do work independently, but then you are very tightly coupled with your team, with your other stakeholders with whom you have to continuously communicate with. So I guess this is a good trait to have. So they started implementation, and the methods they started writing methods and global implementation without defined structure. Like we write Python code inside terminals, or when we are just writing a rough code on a Python file. Usually, the kind of code we write in pandas or stuff like that, right? There were no specific structure and no object-oriented methodologies being used, concepts being used. So what they thought was they thought of creating a method by which they would be building a try, and the method of building a try was iterative method. I mean, inside for loop, pretty standard, and they implemented it the way they explained, except the part which I highlight to them at the end while I'm giving them feedback. So the approach was fairly correct. However, the code written would have been improved. I believe that, like I mentioned, the object-oriented approach was missing there. There was no specific structure which they could have had, I'd say. So I reminded them that the code needs to be of production grade, right? So I also added that how would they deploy a code into production? Or whenever they are writing a project, how do they usually go about writing that code? Because we do not write code
You're good with
like that
installation.
in our projects or
So,
even in the code which we try to deploy in
would you
production,
like to
right?
do another
We have
quick
classes, we have proper structure
dry
of
run?
each and every part of that code. So they got that hint pretty
So,
quickly,
let me bring the
and
examples,
they started writing classes. They gave
down.
a good structure to their methods. Although I would have an ideal solution would have been
right
bit
above the
different,
class.
but considering they are still in college
If
and
you
they
follow my
haven't worked
cursor, you
on
will find
many
it. Just click on the
projects, big
yeah.
projects going into
So
production, and
let's
they do
dry.
not have the
Let's
guidance which they
do
would
a
have
dry run
usually
for this,
got
and
while they would be working in as a software engineer in any company. So I think still the approach which they took was pretty good. So they created a class which is words checker. Inside that, they initialize their variables, they initialize their th-
yeah,
the
I understand
rows
the
and columns
solution. I just
which
want you to run through your code and see if
could
it
have been traversed while
does
finding the
what you are
words, like
intending it to
towards
do,
right,
what
left,
you
and
want it to do.
those pairs, right? They initialized the answer list, they initialized the root of that try, although they mentioned it child. They, while discussing at the end, we discussed about it, and they said that
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to make it root, but the implementation was mostly done, and they copied and pasted it. They realized it a bit later that it could have been changed. So I think it's still fine, not an issue if they are clarifying it. I would say they should have clarified it,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's fine. Not a deal breaker, I would say. So other than that, they created a method which is build try, where they were building their try with the iterative method.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was just a method, but now they have added that method inside their class. But while we discuss whether, well, we discussed about it that
Mm-hmm.
how they could have moved that method out of that class into another class. Then the next method they wrote is safe. So is safe actually checks whether it's safe to move to a cell or not, whether the bounds are correct while they're iterating through the matrix. The next is the find word. Find word is the actual method. Sorry, not the actual method. So find word is the helper method which they would be using, and they would be applying DFS upon, and they would be finding the method inside the finding the word inside the matrix. Now the main method which they write is solve method, which would actually be called, and they have passed board and a list of words in it. So
Okay, can you write
what they
this
do
function?
basically in that method is they first build a try, they iterate through the list of words and they build that try. After that, they traverse the board. One thing very good about the code they have written is that they have tried to add comments as well. That is, I would say, that is really good and shows uh, the developer cares about the code and they want the other person to understand. So we know it for a fact that a code is read more times than it is being written or say updated, right? So it is very very important that the code is readable, and one of the ways to make it readable is by adding comments. So I'd say that's really really good that they have added comments in there. So that is what they did. That is about the methods and the class which they created. They had a few bugs in their code, for which I
Mm-hmm.
asked them to do dry runs multiple times, and they did find most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Although they missed a few which they should have caught, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they found most of them and acted upon them.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Cool. So, the visited set which you're creating, right? So, when would this visited set be reset? When would it be reset? So, what I'm trying to say is, if you just follow my cursor, so you have O, A, T, and H. You would mark them as visited once you have visited them, right? In your set. So now O, A, T, H, these coordinates are now visited. So if I try to find E, A, T, right? So if A is visited after E, it would never go to A, because now it's visited. And since T is visited, it will never go to T. Hmm. So the question here would should have been that, do we really need visited or not? We we do not need a visited. Right, exactly. So I'll give you one more minute. Right, just find if there is any problem with the code. You have forgotten what? Hmm. Anything else? You have 2 minutes left. Okay, Vikas. Let's stop here. Do you have any questions? Don't have any questions. Okay. So our formal interview session ends right here. Right? Now I would be giving you certain feedback. What I really liked about you is the way you approached this problem. Right? So first I'm not sure. Did you know? Have you solved this problem before? Okay. So you haven't seen this problem before, is it? Cool, cool. I would say the way you have approached it is really good. So you first approached it with a brute force solution, right? And you gave a good time complex, and you gave a good time complexity to it, right? And the reason was really good about what you gave, right? And then when I asked you to give you an optimized solution, so you mentioned that we can use try. So what I would like to know is why did you say that you would need try? Hmm. So what what gave you the what 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 part of the question gave you that you should be using try? So this rain and rains p and p's part, is it? Cool. So I mean, didn't search the word give it out that you could use try perhaps? I mean, just saying. Yeah, yeah. What I'm trying to say is, uh, usually when we say that search the word, if it's present or not, try clicks us, right? So was it that thing which clicked you, or is it just P and P's thing? It's not a feedback. I'm just curious to know about it. Uh-huh. Right, right, right. True, true, true. Mhm. So I would say that this point is totally commendable. That what you did was you went through a brute force solution and then you walked the interviewer to a optimized solution, right? This was really good, and you did it in a very good manner and within a good time. Then, what I would say is the code which you wrote here, I mean, not the code exactly, but the logic which you wrote here was, uh, I mean, it was correct to some extent. Yes, it has few holes. I mean, I'm talking about this logic, which I just highlighted. If you if you just follow my cursor again, right? So this code which you wrote, the logic which you wrote, although it has major holes in it, but yeah, you wrote it in a good time. So it gave you some room for actually improving upon the code which you have written, right? So so now you could have written a class, then you wrote an init function, and you wrote all the functions inside it, right? So that was a good part that you did. Now, coming to the things which you could have done better. First thing, I mean, you actually could have started with a class, right, which you have written here. So, while we started our discussion, you said you asked whether you need to write a pseudocode or uh, an actual code. So I said it should be a production ready code, right? So when the other person asks you it should be a production ready code, you should think about how you would write it in a project, right? So what you would do is you would write classes, you would write methods, right? So that is one thing you could have done. Now, if you just follow my cursor, so keep following my cursor, okay? So that you know that where I'm pointing and which part I'm talking about. So now class words checker. I think it's a net grid thing. So I think it's not a well followed convention to have underscores in class name for Python. I guess it's Pascal case. Right? No, it's Pascal case. So it should have been words checker, right? Something like that. So it should have been that. This is one thing which we can improve upon. I I really like that although you used R and C, but still it is pretty clear that you mean row and column. So you saved time for variables, but then it was I would say comparatively clearer that it R means a row and C means a column. That's a good thing. You could have also used row and column, but yeah, that's fine. I would say it works. Another thing which you could have done better is rather than saying child, you could have said it's a root. I got it. At the last part of the code, you got a bit confused, right? Oh yeah, that's totally fine. I'll just bring this function down so that I guess right. So this is another thing. Now, it is always better to not use I, right? And say you could have written cat. Maybe a C would have made better sense. But then in this particular case, since it's just a single variable and its scope is very limited and we do not have any eyes other than in the for loop, I would say it works. It's not a red flag, right? Now, again, another thing I would say is between two functions, always try to keep some distance, right? At least a distance of two spaces because inside a function you keep a distance of one line space, which is fine. But between two functions, it would be a so. I'm not saying that the interviewer will cut any marks or give you any bad remarks for this, but exactly, they would be able to understand your code better, right? And yes, I noticed that you try to give space between the operators. So again, it's a kind of a practice which you have to maintain, right? So that you give spaces at the very beginning while you're writing your code. Right? So right now, what I'm assuming is you have a good practice of writing code on an IDE, right? And IDE does a lot of things for you. Yes, right. So I mean, at least while trying to solve questions, DSA questions, I would say refrain from using an IDE. Right? Write code. You can use a pen and paper, or you can write it on the IDE provided by the platform, whichever platforms you are using. Right? Again, if you see here, there is a lot of space, three line space, which is not again required. So I would assume that it is a different standalone something which you wrote mistakenly, right? So find words, it's pretty fine. I would say again, I. You could have avoided I here, right? And the brackets were not balanced at many places. If you know, yeah, yeah. So the point is, I guess here the brackets are not balanced. Then here as well, the bracket is not balanced. Here the bracket is not balanced. Just follow my cursor if you're following my cursor, you see it, right? So these are some places where the brackets are not balanced, right? So you could use you could use some code hygiene here, right? Again, S. When you wrote this S, it's very easy to lose track, like you did, right? You lost track of putting S here and here, and it's pretty easy to lose track when you're naming your variables like this, right? Another thing, you have I and J here, but you have again used I. Now I don't know where is this I used. And you just follow my cursor again, right? If you see, there is an I here and there is an I here, right? However, we have R. I don't know what this R is, right? I don't know, right? I don't know so I don't know where is this I being used, or if this I is being used anywhere at all. I understand the solution which you're trying to write, okay? But then this would give you errors. This would anyway give you runtime errors or compile time errors. I'm not sure if there are any compile time errors in Python or not, but yeah, this will give you errors, right? So something to improve upon. Do not name your variables ij. You would certainly lose track of what's happening, right? So one thing is that okay, more about, let me just complete around code hygiene, and then we will talk about the problems in your logic. So this is more or less fine. If is safe, there should have been a space here. That's fine, not a biggie. So once you removed the visited set, you should have removed it from here as well, right? Again, I and J's should be avoided as much as possible, right? So now, holes in logic. There are some big holes in logic which you have written, big holes in the code which you have written. First thing is this. I don't think it would work. I know what you tried to write, but so if your character is not in your root, you should have added that in your root. So you have, okay, sorry, you have added it in your root, is it? Okay, sorry. So see, this is what happens when you use eyes, right? Sorry. I totally missed it. Okay, so this would work, right? You are giving it to root, and then again the root is now the child. So again, if it's not present, it will keep. So one thing which is missing here is your hash, right? Yeah, hash is missing. Now, there are there is another way which would have been better to build a try, is to create a different try class. and adding search and insert methods there, right? It would have been much, much clearer. You, your code here would have been much better. But yeah, I understand. Uh, so since you are a fresher, right, you wouldn't be judged much upon oops. But if you do it, it, I mean, you would certainly get brownie points, right? So you missed hash. Then there is a problem in this part of your code. I hope you get it. J is greater than n or j is greater than n, right? So although I and j I understand, but what is n and what is n? Right? So it is not an n cross n matrix, it is an m cross n matrix. So you should have mentioned it, I mean, you should have used the length of your board or something, right? Which is missing in here. This part again would not work because we did not add anything. I mean, it's fine, just do not modify your code, right? So this is my basic feedback around what you did, right? Although, see, the logic which you wrote and the way you wrote the code was pretty good, right? But these are the few things which I told you, right? Code hygiene and few slips in the logic, like you missed is safe, right? So I had to give you a bit. I had to push you a bit, ask you to do a dry run twice or thrice to get you there. But if you wouldn't have done that, I would have asked you if there is a range problem or not, right? So it should have been, you should have been able to notice it, right? So these are the few points which could have costed your interview, right? Although these are very silly mistakes, but then the competition is strong as well, right? So I would say the way you're approaching a problem is really good, right? The way you, sorry, yeah. So the way you're approaching the problem is good. You are talking to the interviewer, good, right? And what I would say is just refine upon the way you're writing your code, right? So if you're using Lead Code or if you're any other platform, whatever platform you're using, just see how others are writing code there, right? It's it's fine to check others' solution if you get to learn something, right? So your stars, your points do not matter till the part you're learning. Okay? It's fine. I would say it's fine to check others' solutions after you have done yours or after you have tried yours or whatever way you want to, whatever order you want to, right? Just be honest to your just be honest to your preparation. That's it, I would say, right? And it's fine to check others' code. So that's my feedback towards you. That what could have been improved, and that's it. Do you have any feedback for me that what I can improve? Something you felt that
So, guys, that was it for the interview with Vikas. We could not exactly again record Vikas's feedback, but he did not have any such feedback. But I would be glad if you could add
do
some
you think
feedback in
I
the
could have
comments.
improved
Uh,
anything else?
what could have been done better if my
So thanks a
evaluation was
lot because
correct,
it was
or
fun talking
where
to
I
you.
could have put
I
more
hope I
focus
could
on. Please
could have
do
helped you
comment
in
and
some
do
way.
let me know. I'm eager to know my mistakes and improve
Thank
upon
you.
them.